Garmajoba. Welcome to Georgia Real Estate. So I got a message on my channel, and it's kind of a wise guy, maybe a wise girl, I don't know who it was, but didn't really ask a question, but they just mentioned Georgia's corrupt. And kind of, someone just kind of trolling me. I don't have a big channel at all, and especially at this time of this video. So I just played along and decided to play along a little bit. I just said, who isn't corrupt? What government isn't corrupt? Basically, every government in the world is corrupt. So they kind of were just playing around, having fun, but it made me start thinking, it's true. Georgia's corrupt, the US is corrupt, everywhere is corrupt, China's corrupt. But how corrupt are they? How corrupt is Georgia? How corrupt is the US? I think most people, since I speak English, are going to be listening from the US or have interest in the US or something to do with the US. So I thought, well, let's see. I know Georgia was very corrupt, especially after the Soviet Union broke up. So that's a fact. But I know they've gotten better. And how good is it? Is it better than the US now? Worse than the US? Close? I thought that was quite interesting. So this joker, who thought he'd have a little fun with me and just say something I think maybe thought was negative, I think I'll see if I can make something positive of it, even if, say, Georgia is corrupt. I, have property there, I live there. It doesn't affect me, and maybe most countries where you live, maybe you live in the U.S., it's not going to affect you. But there's other things besides corruption. How much tax are you going to pay? Can you buy a house in the U.S.? Can you afford to buy a house in the U.S.? Is it cheaper to buy a house in Georgia? Is it better to retire in Georgia? There's many things. You have to think what's best for you. If you're just focused on corruption, if you think this one country just has less corruption than the other country, and that's your whole purpose of living there, then I probably can't help you. I think most people would expect the U.S., since it's a democracy, it's not really a democracy, but it's a democratic republic, but have elections, free elections, freedom of speech, can carry a gun, all these things, all these rights that are given in the Constitution. You might think, well, the U.S. has to be number one, the most uncorrupt country there is. So let me see if I can get some facts, some actual, not just my opinion or what I think or what I've heard people say. Let's see some facts. Of course, all facts, they can be leaning right or left. So we'll just, I found something interesting. As you see in the picture, it's a Global State of Democracy Initiative. And you can see the Global State of Democracy Report for 2022, Forging Social Contracts in a Time of Discontent. So this is 2022. I don't know how new this information is going to be. Obviously, it's not going to be they didn't get the information the same day and write this report, so it might even be a year old. But this is the newest information I have. So we'll use this as one source of corruption and see where it leads us. Let's take a look. So here's the first report. I'm not going to read all of it, but you can take a look at it. You can pause it and read it yourself. It's called The Americas. So I'll just read a couple things and we'll go from there. Well, the Americas is the world's second most democratic region. Haiti, Nicaragua, and Venezuela have joined Cuba as autocracies in the region. In the USA, threats to democracy persist after the Trump presidency, illustrated by polarization, counter-majoritarianism, and the rolling back of long-established rights. Well, that doesn't sound too good. It doesn't sound like the U.S. is getting stronger and better. Kind of sounds like it's not doing so well. Let's keep reading. Rising threats to democracy include toxic polarization, disinformation and fake news, restrictive laws and bans on rights, intimidation of the press, and increasing attacks on courts and EMBs. Discontent is also on the rise, fueled by poverty, inequality, insecurity, corruption, and the effects of the pandemic, people are turning to the ballot box and streets looking for change. So you can see, and we can see on many news outlets, not all, but some, that USA is not on the top of their game. They're not doing so well. Has a lot of problems. Many countries do, of course, but that's what we're going to try to see, who has maybe more problems, less problems. And on the corruption part, maybe if you're just going by corruption, or of course you want to probably have that be a part of your process, but which country might be better to live in? Let's take a look at the next slide. This is the next one called Beleaguered Democracy. While the Americas is overwhelmingly democratic, most countries' performance have been mid-range or lower. The average score across all sub-attributes for all democracies is slightly lower than the average in 2010. So there you go, 2022. Since 2010, it's getting worse. It's not as democratic as people might want you to think. A third of countries have experienced declines in at least 3 sub-attributes in the last 2 years, including the USA. So there you see, the USA has a decline. Except a lot of countries do, but if you're going to base on all countries in USA isn't getting better, it's getting worse. So you see here, in addition, Brazil and the USA are backsliding democracies. So there you go again, USA, a backsliding democracy. Things aren't getting better. They're not better for the people or the country. It's backsliding. It's getting worse. In the USA, recent mass mobilizations called for government action on climate change. Political compromises facilitated the inclusion of important energy and climate provisions in the Inflation Reduction Act, albeit weaker measures than the administration had pledged. A boom in the gig economy during the pandemic also contributed to increased demands for labor protection in a sector in which migrants and people of color are the most affected. The Labor Department is currently considering these demands. Backlash against the Supreme Court's decision in Dobbs versus Jackson. Women's Health Organization, which effectively overturned the reproductive rights protected by Roe versus Wade, also led to protests to prevent further rollbacks in such states as Kansas, where the referendum's results conveyed discontent with the judicial decision viewed as detached from public opinion. They don't mention the BLM riots, but you see there is some problems in the U.S. So you can see this one, democracy in retreat, social contracts under pressure. You can stop this, take a read. I'm not going to read it, but you can see in the center there, at the same time, half of the world's democracies are in retreat. So things aren't getting better. So you kind of got to go, as another channel says, go where you're treated best. If the government can't take care of you, you have to take care of yourself. So where are you going to go? So now we're going to look at explore the data. I'm not going to go through all these, but always on the top is going to be Georgia. The middle is going to be the USA, and the rest is going to be the world. And you can see the averages and how Georgia compares to the US, and how Georgia compares to the world, and how the United States compares to the world. So you might want to take a pause, take a look, and see which country is actually better. You can see in this first chart here that Georgia does better than their average is better than the rest of the world's average. They're just a little bit behind on the United States. And Georgia's not even that old as a country. They haven't been around that long. They've been a part of the Soviet Union before. You can see in the towards the end, inclusive suffrage score, Georgia's tied with the United States. Let's take a look at the next part of this. See on this one, in the beginning, elected government score, the U.S. and Georgia are tied, and they're both ahead of the world average. Elected government confidence, Georgia and the U.S. are tied ahead of the rest of the world. I'm not going to go through all these, but you can see there's a lot of ties with Georgia and the U.S. But Georgia seems to be ahead in every category than the world, the rest of the world. So it's not too bad. This one, actually, in the beginning here, social rights and equality score, Georgia actually scores higher than the U.S. Social rights and equality confidence, Georgia scores higher. Actually, Georgia's scoring quite higher in the 3 out of the top 4 categories here. That's not too shabby. You see there's quite a few charts here, so I'm just going to go through it kind of quickly. But Georgia scores pretty well compared to the U.S. and just about everything above the world average. So look at the last, I think this is the last page here. And there you go. So a small country like Georgia, which is not even that old. The U.S. is over 200, almost 250 years old, I believe now. Georgia's less than 20 years old as an independent country. They're doing quite well. They were corrupt when they first left the Soviet Union, but now on their own, they've been doing very well. They're not in a decline like the U.S. is. They're on an incline, so they're doing quite well. So I don't want to just go with one source. This is not my favorite source, but it's one of the first things that came up when I was looking at specifically corruption in Georgia. And it's Wikipedia, which is not the best information you can get, but it's another source. So we can look at it. And first sentence: corruption in Georgia had been an issue in the post-Soviet decades. But I'm not going to, like I said, read all this for you. But in January 2012, the World Bank called Georgia a unique success of the world in fighting corruption. So you could pause here, read this information from Wikipedia. I don't know if that's enough proof for you. Like I said, I'm not a big fan of Wikipedia, but this says corruption's not that bad in Georgia. It's bad. It's corruption everywhere, but not that bad in Georgia. So then, since I looked at Wikipedia for Georgia, let's just look at Wikipedia for the U.S. So as you can see, it doesn't say too much about corruption in the U.S. on Wikipedia. I wonder why that is, but it's funny that the last sentence, as of 2022, the United States is the 27th least corrupt country, according to the Corruption Perceptions Index. So 27. Why isn't the U.S. number 1? Who is number 1? I knew who it was. I think it's Finland, but it's one of those Norwegian countries. Those are the least corrupt. So 27, it's not that good. So you want to call Georgia corrupt, but the U.S. is 27th? Interesting. So, since that didn't give us much information on Wikipedia about corruption in U.S., at least not as much information it did on Georgia, I found one more. I could be here all day looking at all these things, but found one last one, which I don't know if they're a right or left-leaning publication, I don't know, but FP. And you can see from the highlighted title, Report, Corruption in U.S. at Worst Levels in Almost a Decade. Well, so where's your corruption? And like I said, I agree there's corruption in every country, but just for some idiot to say Georgia's corrupt, obviously they don't know what they're talking about. They're just trolling me. But I thought it was quite an interesting subject. I knew Georgia was corrupt. I knew it was getting better, but I didn't know compared to other countries, especially the U.S. But I think this kind of shows that Georgia's heading in the right direction and the U.S. is heading in the wrong direction if you're looking at just based on corruption. So I think that sums up this video. I hope you found that a little bit interesting. Of course, do some more research yourself. See what's going on. I'm not really trying to compare these countries. Like I said, I agree Georgia was corrupt. There's always corruption everywhere. But it seems Georgia's heading in the right direction. And if you look at other things and other factors, being taxes and being able to buy a house and the cost of living, inflation, all these things, you got to take all these things into consideration. For me, Georgia works better. I lived in the U.S., so I have a good idea. But for you people that haven't been to Georgia or maybe haven't been to the U.S., maybe deciding one or the other, I always tell people don't go to the U.S., especially now. It's not a good time. Georgia doesn't have the best inflation rate either, but even so, the cost of living, I lived there. I could live there for $1,000 a year without any house payments or rental, just buying food and living a decent life, not going out and eating steak every night, but just a regular life. It cost me about $1,000 a year to live. So can you do that in the U.S. or whatever country you're looking at? Maybe you can. So take that all into account. If you want to come to Georgia, I say come on home. I'll help you out. Just let me know. Thanks for watching.